Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers.
We've got part 2 of our debate between Adam Laxalt and Sam Brown for U.S. Senate.
On an all-new Nevada Newsmakers. And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're continuing with our debate. This is for the United States Senate on the Republican side in the primary between Captain Sam Brown, retired, served in Afghanistan, and former Attorney General Adam Laxalt, who served in Iraq. Sam, I'm going to come to you for the first question in our second half here. When Harry Reid ran for re-election against Sharon Angle, noted Republican Sig Rogich formed Republicans for Reid because he wanted to make sure in negotiations with other states on the Colorado River that Nevada will be well represented. As it stands right now, the states are working collaboratively to solve drought issues. As a United States Senator, what would you want to see? The status quo with the states doing this, or some kind of congressional solution?
Well, ideally, the states work collaboratively and help solve the issue. But
how would they do that, by the way?
Well, that wouldn't be for me to dictate. But whether it's through governors working together, or perhaps they create assembly or legislative commissions. At the end of the day, we need to acknowledge that water is a crisis here, and something needs to change. I mean, the division of water on the Colorado goes back to an agreement that's 100 years old, and certainly conditions on the ground have changed in terms of population density, where folks are at, how water's been used historically, and so we do need to go back and look at that, and I would hope that the federal government wouldn't have to come in and drive that, and so we give the states an opportunity, but at the end of the day, something must be done.
General Laxalt?
When I was Attorney General, we had to do a lot of water issues, including Southern Nevada Water Authority, and there's no question this is going to be one of the most challenging issues for the next few generations of our great state. Look, the reality is the allocation is not great for our state. This is
Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters,
whatever power
arrangements
were attempted back then, as you mentioned, simply have not become fruitful. And so I'd be open to any solution that will get us more allocation, and certainly looking at a federal level. I think in the end of the day, it's probably what it's going to take. It's going to take a courageous president that's going to have to look in the face of all the power in California, which has so much political power, and say Nevada's getting a short end of the stick, and we need to reallocate the Colorado.
Okay, now you are aware that it took Senator Reid 30 years, literally 30 years, to renegotiate the Truckee River operating agreement. So is this something you would envision that a senator would start, but potentially would, unless they stayed in Congress for 30 years, not be able to finish up?
Yeah, look, it's important if you can get agreement amongst states, and if that agreement was there a decade ago, so be it. But that agreement is not there today. And what we face today is that Nevada's not getting any more water in the allocation. So I'm certainly not suggesting that we just scrap it. Something is absolutely better than nothing. But I do think it's important that we go to work and try to get Nevada a better share.
Captain Brown, do you accept that it would be somewhere in the order of 30 years to get some kind of congressional agreement on water?
No, I don't accept that. I mean, the crisis, the timeline does not allow for us to accept that. It's time for Nevadans to demand more. We certainly deserve better, and California has got so much water that, from snow melt runoff, for example, that just runs off straight into the ocean and turns into salt water, that we should find a way for them and us to work collaboratively to capture some of that and return it back. Even if that means that we need to take more off the Colorado and they take some of that snow melt runoff and repurpose it internally within California, then so be it. But at the end of the day, no, we don't wait 30 years for someone to be a champion over that sort of long haul. We need action soon.
Well, and I just want to point out that the Metropolitan Water District is working on being able to capture some of the runoff that goes into the Pacific Ocean that is billions of gallons of water. But again, this is a decades-long project. Victor Joecks is joining me as co-moderator on this program. He's a columnist for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Victor?
Adam, I want to ask you about immigration. As I'm sure you both know, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto has flip-flopped on Title 42, going from opposing it to saying we should leave it in place until there's a plan in place to deal with the expected surge in illegal immigration at the border. But one thing she's not flipped on is her support for amnesty. And so, Adam, I'm going to start with you. Do you support amnesty for any group of illegal immigrants?
So the open border policies of President Biden that Senator Masto supported lockstep until, as you point out, Title 42, they've greatly endangered our country. It's one of the biggest crises we've faced, something voters are absolutely irate about and just cannot believe that our government will not do the basic duty of giving us a secure border, which has led to fentanyl spikes in our state, human trafficking increases. The same things, by the way, that Senator Masto is running commercials on right now, pretending that she's a champion to fight against human trafficking, when in fact she supports the open border policies that have led to the increases in this. So I think that we need to get back to a secure border, absolutely. And I think that amnesty is off the table. I don't support amnesty in any form. That this is something that's creating a magnet. It's creating incentivizing people to come in. We need a moratorium. We need a secure border. All that needs to happen immediately to, frankly, save the security and the law and order of our country.
Sam, same question for you. What are your thoughts on amnesty?
Yeah, amnesty is not something that honors the processes, the law, the people who immigrated here lawfully and went through the process to become American citizens according to our law. And so we need to continue to uphold that. I am not for amnesty in any way, shape, or form. And at the end of the day, immigrants to this country are a large part of what's made it great, but we also are a country of law and order, and we need to follow that. If people want to make changes to our immigration law, which I think that we should look at, how do we expedite the process? For example, I've talked to someone who legally became a U.S. citizen and it took 27 years. It shouldn't be that way. But we can talk about that. But at the end of the day, amnesty is not something that we should allow.
Okay, so you bring up a really important point, which is that for anybody to become legalized after crossing into the country illegally can take decades if it can be accomplished at all. And so my question to you is, the last time that immigration reform was conducted was in 1986 under Ronald Reagan. President Bush tried to get immigration reform done in a comprehensive manner, and that was working with Senator Reid and with John McCain, and that blew up because John McCain decided to run for president. Is there a way to look at immigration not in a comprehensive way, to start taking care of the issues, A, to find a route to legality for the people who are here without sending them back home, and B, to take care of the need we have in this country for workers? Because here in Nevada, every business that you can think of needs workers, and we don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are important conversations to have. It's obviously a large issue that hasn't been solved in decades of debate. We're not going to solve it here at this debate table and, a 1-minute exchange or 30-second rebuttals. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we need to go back and look at the process and system as a whole, break down the different components and say, look, this has been working well. This is something that maybe we can adjust and go back and put some real work and time and effort into it, and hopefully we end up with something that can be a bipartisan solution.
General Laxalt?
Well, my family came to Nevada as Basque immigrants, sheep herders in the early 1900s, and common refrain you hear is, for generations, people came here legally. And the system we have over the last 4 decades is absolutely unpardonable. I don't understand how we got here. I do not understand how you mentioned one of the attempted agreements. This strategy didn't work. We needed a secure border first and foremost. It is the first right of nationhood. It's the most important indicia of sovereignty. And most nations in the world, those even that are far more liberal than us, have secure borders. And so it all starts with secure border. And then, of course, we should be in charge of the policies of who's coming and going, what the needs particularly are. But we can't make those decisions in the middle of a situation. We have 2 million illegal encounters at the border right now. There's no way we can have a realistic discussion about policy. And as far as employment needs, it's important to remind people it is paying people to stay home for over 2 years that created this massive unemployment situation. And it went way too long. The lockdowns obviously had terrible effects. All the COVID policies had terrible effects on our economy and the workforce. And a lot of people still are simply not willing to come back to work. Some states moved right away, cut those off, and got people back to work. We're still not back there as Nevada. And unfortunately, Governor Sisolak's failed in that. Senator Mastos failed at calling him out for those poor policies.
Just a quick response, if you wouldn't mind, maybe 30 seconds or less. We talk all the time about the southern border, but what about the northern border? And that is as long, if not longer, than the southern border. It is longer. And the ports of entry, which is where, up until recently, most of the illegal action was from people coming to this country through ports of entry, legal ports of entry, and overstaying their visas. How would you deal with that?
Well, that's none of this is easy to address, and whether it's better kind of scanning or screening methods at the port of entries, or just actually allowing our federal law enforcement agents to do what they're supposed to do. We too often handcuff our law enforcement agents at the border, and we let the people who are illegally crossing the border go. It's about following the rule of law that we currently have.
General Laxalt?
We need to make this an absolute priority. And the reality is that past administrations have not. President Trump tried to reverse decades-long a slide in this direction, but we need to marshal all the resources we need, whatever it takes, to make sure that we are in control of our ports of entry and our borders. But let me just say that the Democrat Party, they are absolutely committed to open borders. They invented sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, which was such a dangerous and unbelievable concept. As someone that was the top law enforcement officer of the state, to see the federal government working against federal law enforcement, people that swore an oath simply to protect American citizens, that created a really dangerous and toxic environment. We're reliving that in spades right now. And again, Nevada needs a senator that is willing to stand against the left, stand against these radical open border policies. Senator Masto has voted for everything that Biden has put forward, and she has not called out any of the executive actions that have opened this border and made us less safe as a state.
Victor?
Sam, we'll start with you. Social media companies routinely target conservatives. Sometimes they suppress their reach or just outright ban their accounts. Section 230 protects these companies from legal liability even when they engage in viewpoint discrimination. What changes, if any, should be made to Section 230 or laws regarding social media companies more broadly?
Yeah, Section 230 actually, comes out of a part of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, well before these social media companies existed. And so I think for these companies to kind of hide behind that is a problem. One of the things that I think that we should look at is if these companies want to sort of edit or moderate, if you will, what people are saying on their platforms, then they're editors, and they ought to be held to that standard. If they are about free speech, then let people have their voice unfiltered, unmoderated. And look, I know what this is like. I was temporarily kicked off of Twitter completely. Facebook won't even allow me as an individual to have an account. And so this is something I understand personally. But we have to go back, and at the end of the day, it's not going to be this Congress that's been there for 40 years or whatever, in certain leadership positions, that's going to understand how to actually address this.
Adam, what should we do about social media companies?
Big tech is one of the biggest threats we face in our country right now. I mean, free speech is an absolute core pillar of what made America the greatest republic that's ever lived. And big tech has so much power, and their ability to silence speech in the public square is a threat to all of that. And you ask me as a conservative 10 years ago, would I believe in regulating big tech? I would have said it's a private sector matter. But the fact of the matter is, for the big ones, the groups that own almost 90% of these market shares, these are now essentially public utilities. These are public highways, communication highways, and I certainly would support going after 230. I support the advancement of the antitrust, whether it's the lawsuits that are going on or looking at it at a federal level. If you look at Florida, again, Governor DeSantis, he passed a series of laws trying to rein in big tech. And one thing he pointed out is, if big tech can silence me, if it's next September and I'm in a dead even race against Senator Master at the 51st race for the United States Senate, and I could be yanked off of Twitter, the main communications tool for a lot of campaigns, that's a huge problem. For Facebook, there's this is where you pay to reach voters. If they can pull that tool from me, that gives the Democrat an absolute advantage. And so these are the types of things we need to look at reform. It's unacceptable. And maybe Elon Musk is a great turn. Maybe he's going to move it back in a free market section.
Okay, I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you on time here. Did you want to rebut any of what's just been said?
No need to rebut. I would just say, look, there's so many topics here for us to discuss. There's a lot of depth to explore, and so I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I hope that Adam will join me in the invitation that Channel 8 in Las Vegas has offered to do another debate.
Okay, well,
on the 26th.
all right, and that's great, but I want to continue on with this one. So, Adam, you have spent most of the time during this debate attacking Catherine Cortez Masto. What are your differences with Sam Brown?
Well, look, I was elected to be Attorney General of this state. As you all well know, I beat Ross Miller, who was a prohibitive favorite and a favorite son of both political classes at the time. And I went to work. I was 36 years old, and we were able to create the first ever military legal assistance program. We created an elder fraud unit that had the largest guardianship prosecution in the history of the state. We had the first human trafficking prosecution. I wore the top cop hat. We actually brought law enforcement together, which is why, by the way, they just moved. The law enforcement unions moved from Masto in 16 to me in this race.
Okay, but what are your differences with Sam Brown?
These are the differences. This is what I've done for the state. This is what I've proven in office. Voters have been able to see what they get, someone that's hardworking, someone that is going to accomplish exactly what I say I'm going to accomplish, and someone that's going to fight for them.
All right, Sam Brown, what are your differences with Adam Laxalt?
At the end of the day, I'm a small businessman, a family man, and I'm someone who will not bend or break under pressure. And so at the end of the day, I'm running, in contrast to Adam, to be a champion for Nevadans, especially on issues that we shouldn't give away. Election integrity is one where Adam has failed us. And another is his lack of protecting the Second Amendment.
Adam, you want to rebut that?
For him to say that I failed on election integrity is, obviously pretty comical. I was the chair of the Trump campaign, and we sounded every alarm imaginable as the Democrats radically altered our election. And unfortunately, they gave us a system that created the opportunity for fraud and made voters feel like we got a much less safe system. He's been recently attacking me, suggesting that I didn't go investigate voter fraud when I was Attorney General. And, he wouldn't know this necessarily, but the reality is it's the Secretary of State that's empowered with investigating voter fraud in this state. And so President Trump looked into a camera and said the only person that he can trust in this state is me, and that's because I have stood consistently and concretely for our conservative values as Attorney General, and indeed through the end of the 2020 campaign.
Would you like to rebut?
Yeah, you know, Mr. Laxalt relies on endorsements because Nevadans can't rely on him. The fact of the matter is, you knew as Attorney General that non-citizens were registering to vote, and you did nothing. You knew that in 2016, non-citizens did vote, and you did nothing about that. And then in 2020, when President Trump, Nevadans and Americans were relying on you to be the one to challenge any sort of issues with the 2020 election, the only thing you did was to file a lawsuit that, per your own admission, was late. You should have known better. Nevadans deserve better, and you need to be honest about your record.
Well, Sam, you need to be honest with the voters. You were running in Texas and living in Texas when you're accusing me of not doing these things that I never had power to do. The Secretary of State in this state is in charge of elections, in charge of investigations, and so, you know, the bottom line, I was just as disappointed as the next person. I know Victor Joecks covered a lot of these issues over the years, that there were problems in our elections, and it was unfortunate the Secretary of State did not move on those. But President Trump does not throw away his endorsement lightly, and the reality is he has endorsed me in this race because he knows that I did the best I possibly could standing up for our elections in a state where, in the end of the day, you had a Democrat governor and 2 Democrat houses. They went in and they changed the rules. And unfortunately, there was nothing much we could do about that.
Does President Trump know that you filed the lawsuits late, though? And does he know that when you lost to Steve Sisolak in 2018, you blamed 100,000 Trump voters for that loss? What have you told him?
President Trump has often stated that he's well aware lawsuits were filed late. I was not in charge of any lawsuits. I was a co-chair of the campaign. I was not in charge of litigation. That was the Trump campaign. They hired lawyers. They filed the lawsuits. And so he's just as disappointed as I am that lawsuits came late to the state of Nevada, came late in a lot of other places. And hopefully this campaign, as I've spoken since the media has been asking about it since day one, I've never shirked from this issue of election integrity. We need to be able to be willing to file lawsuits early. We need to be able to have good lawyers that are paying attention and doing whatever we can to try to tighten up our system and disincentivize any potential voter fraud.
Okay, last word here.
So as the chairman of the Trump campaign, at what point do you accept responsibility for the lack of lawyers performing, for the failure of lawsuits to be filed on time? I just don't understand when President Trump has asked you to take that leadership position, and Nevadans, including folks like me who volunteered to get him reelected, are counting on someone at the top to do something, and you did nothing.
Sam, I didn't see you in any way volunteering to be part of that solution. I was the one that had to stand on the line there through the end as the media was attacking me, even challenging my patriotism, someone that served our country in uniform. The reality is that presidential campaigns are run by the National Presidential Campaign. It's always done that way. I bemoaned and was incredibly upset that action came late, but I wasn't in charge. And President Trump understands what happened. Yeah. He's not happy with it. And again, Republicans need to do a better job. This happened all across the country, and this was an RNC national effort. They got caught flat-footed. And we simply did not get the resources that we needed here.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is about, once again, Nevadans deserve better. And we're not going to settle for people who blame everyone else when they fail. If you don't want to be in a position of leadership where you shoulder the burden of executing or failure, you don't have to pursue it.
All right, let's change topics here. Adam, if elected, would you vote for Mitch McConnell to be the majority or minority leader of the Senate?
You know, the biggest problem we have as the Republican Party right now is that we have failed to be on offense. We've allowed our country to drift to the left over the past many decades. I've been incredibly frustrated to watch that. Some of us as a state AG, we've certainly fought against Washington. We fought against President Obama. but we have not seen our DC politicians find a way to go on offense. And so some of the senators that have endorsed me, like Senator Cruz and Senator Cotton and Senator Hawley, these are politicians that are part of the next generation. I'm 43 years old, they're in their 40s. And I think we all understand that we have to be a forward-leading, fighting party. We need to find a way to go on offense and actually take back ground that the Democrats have been gradually taking. So I would vote for the most conservative person that ran for leader.
Okay, so that's a maybe on Mitch McConnell.
I will vote for the most conservative person that runs for leader of the Senate.
Would that be a no regarding Mitch McConnell?
That would be, I would vote for the most conservative person that ran.
Okay, Sam Brown?
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Whoever is going to fight for conservatives, whoever is going to be a conservative champion, whoever is going to push for our country not to continue to slide to the left is who I'm going to vote for. But I have a feeling that Mr. Laxalt owes Mitch McConnell his vote because he has even endorsed his campaign. He leaves that out when he talks about his other endorsements.
Adam, you want to rebut?
This is going to be the biggest Senate race in the history of our state. Chuck Schumer has put $45 million in. They've already been attacking me for months and months and months. And the reality is I'm honored to have President Trump. I'm the only person in America to have Governor Ron DeSantis, who's one of our absolute conservative stalwarts. Yes, as well as Senator Cruz, Cotton, Hawley, our young conservative U.S. senators. And so this is the mold that I plan on leading in. Nevadans need a conservative champion. It's something that I was every day that I was Attorney General.
I have to cut you off because we are out of time here, but we would welcome you back to debate again on the program if you so desire. So Adam Laxalt, former Attorney General, served in Iraq. Captain Sam Brown, retired, served in Afghanistan. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks
and
for
Victor Joecks of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, thank you for being here. And we appreciate it, and we'll be back on Nevada Newsmakers. Go to nevadanewsmakers.com. We have archives going back to 2005. Thank you all very much. As always, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at nevadanewsmakers.com. You can also check our archive going back to 2005 on our website, again, nevadanewsmakers.com. We'll see you on the next show.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Safety is the #1 priority for the trucking industry. Over $7 billion a year is spent on technology like this electronic eye that will apply the brakes automatically. But the most important factor for safety is the truck driver. These hardworking men and women who safely move over 70% of our nation's freight and 94% of Nevada's. We thank you because trucks move America forward.
Nevada Newsmakers Studio is located at the headquarters of the Nevada Trucking Association. Motion and purpose are a truck's greatest virtue.